Welcome to another episode of Orkin's Red Zone. Today I have Albert, water under the bridge, Lechleiter. Albert, how are we doing, man?
I'm good. Again, water under the bridge, I think is how the last name means.
Yeah. By the
Not
way,
100%
I
sure.
asked Albert, I said, what does your last name stand for? And what did you say?
I said, I think it's water under the bridge, but I might have to Google search it
Yeah,
later.
let's leave it as water under the bridge. Albert, man, thank you for joining us on the Red Zone. Tell us a little, before we get into some of the nitty gritty of tactics and strategies you use to be successful, talk a little bit about, just your background, where you're from, where you went to school, first girlfriend, kids, whatever. Just give us a little background about who you are.
Sure. Yeah. So I am 40 years old. I'm going to throw that out there because somehow I measure with age. So I have two children, a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old. I have a wife. We've been married about 15 years. Her name's Amanda. And then I am somehow legacy into Orkin because my wonderful mother, Denisha, she retired from Orkin about 2 years ago. So she had been with Orkin for over 20 years. So in the background, it's always kind of been there. I, of course, try to revolt against it, as many might, if their parents are in sales, right? I'm sure you're facing that at home as well. And what's funny is, so my mom is super duper outgoing and my sister is really outgoing and my dad owns a business. I wasn't quite raised with him, but still he owns a business and he's really outgoing. So I am the lesser salesperson of the family. I'm kind of the lesser outgoing one of the family. And so I didn't really think that sales would be in my future at all. So when I was going to school, I actually wanted to be a teacher. I had this really awesome video production teacher when I was in high school. Final Cut Pro, all of that kind of stuff. So I loved it. And I really thought that was my path. And then I ended up kind of graduating from high school, going into college, getting a degree in film and visual media, getting a minor in business. And right when it's time to pop out into the work, career world, great financial crisis hit. And they cut all the budgets and you realize there might be like 2 positions for the thing I actually went to school for. So it wasn't going to happen. And so, just kind of bumping my head a lot, trying to figure out what path I would go forward. And I'm watching my mom, Denisha, and she's really good at her job, so much so that I thought it would be a really easy job, which it's not, right? But I watched it. I thought it would be really easy and I got a chance. And so that's sort of the path from revolting against sales, being kind of the shyer one of the family, realizing I just had an outgoing family. So I wasn't shy. It was just, they were extra outgoing. And so then kind of going from not being a teacher, like I kind of originally thought I wanted to be, and then jumping into a sales position at Orkin. That's kind of a quick fast forward.
What a story. What a story. I heard from Ed Donahue that your mother is considered a legend. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, she's better than me in every way about this job. She kind of found her niche with, we have this thing called gold medal or like warehousing. And she found her niche with that. And she happened to be in an area with, there's always a little bit of luck in there too, right? Or fortune. She found an area that was growing in a part of town called Mariloma, Eastvale. And so she got to grow alongside with the area, which is always kind of nice if you have this up and coming area to grow along with it. So her book of business went from, minuscule to like massive. And it really was a change of I don't know how you kind of change of fortune, I guess, or circumstance for our family, because now I wish it happened a little earlier, like when I was a little bit younger, because money would be good. But when I was around 18 or so, is maybe 16-ish, is when she started the job at Orkin. And it really went from her being a single mom driving 50 minutes to work at, I don't know if you've ever heard of this company called Clinique. It was like a makeup company that's in the mall. So imagine you're in a Macy's and someone's doing your makeup. That was her job. And it was not paying very well. And she went from that to working at Orkin. And, at Orkin, you're making 6 figures after a little while. So it's huge change in circumstance for the family. And so it was nice to watch that. Yeah. So that legend kind of related to also income, which was kind of nice.
Yeah. I don't want to make this conversation about your mother, but let's make it a conversation about your mother for a second.
For sure.
Like, how did she go from like Clinique? Like, did she tell you the story, how she got to Orkin? Like, what was that story?
Yeah. So there was a friend of hers. Her name was Brenda, and Brenda Ridley was her last name.
Everybody, by the way, everybody has a friend Brenda? What is it with everybody? Everybody has a
It's
friend
just a
named Brenda.
very popular name. And what's funny is like Brenda does this thing, which we don't really suggest, where she jumps from pest control to pest control to pest control company. So my mom tipped the path of like, linear progress. But so Brenda got her an opportunity. And again, my mom is naturally outgoing, also naturally like very powerful with the way that
Yeah.
she acts and kind of deals with people. And so she went from essentially having a hookup to try to get a job, right, which is that kind of referral process that we all do, to
Right.
then landing it and then just doing very, very well with it.
Did she ever tell you, but like, I mean, I don't know her, but I like her already because it takes a lot of personal confidence to say, you know what, I've done makeup, pest control. What's the difference? I
Yeah,
mean, did
well,
she
I
ever tell
mean,
you like the transition to that couldn't have been easy?
well, the one thing about the makeup is it is a sales job. It's like a
Hmm.
retail sales job. So, I mean, and you'll kind of see that through the makeup of a lot of no pun intended, of a lot of the people that would come to Orkin is there's probably some small sliver of like background sales that they've done.
Mhm.
We've had some people that they're no longer here, that the person I'm thinking about, but did like retail furniture, right? So like you come in and you're trying to buy furniture. In this case, it was they came in and they would try to make makeup at the mall. So you're kind of doing their makeup. You're just really chatting with them. So you're doing a long conversation piece. And the entire goal is to get them to be a buyer at the end. So it's kind of a natural progression. I mean, it's more like they're coming in to see you as opposed to outside sales. But I think there's like a sliver, as we know. I mean, we know this. There's a sliver of sales in everything we do. So I think the brave part is going from that to a service industry where you're dealing with like rats and roaches and
Right, right, right.
like a very male dominated, especially 20 something years ago, right? A male dominated industry. That's the part that I think is remarkable because then, and we've noticed this with a lot of our female staff, they kill it here because it's male dominated, and here is something different, right?
Yeah.
Either a softness to it or just the other way of kind of, being remarkable that you have three bids and one of those happens to be a powerful female. So it really went really well for her. I mean, and she obviously was the book that I watched on how to do it.
What a great way to get into this business. So now you graduate from film school, the 2007, 2008, 2009, those years hit, and you got a film background. You're a partial nerd because you knew about Final Cut Pro, so you are kind of a nerd too, right?
Partial
Uh,
is there's yeah, I'm a
yeah,
big nerd.
yeah, it's an understatement, right? I was trying to be nice. Uh, and then so now this opportunity, talk to me about that conversation. Like, uh, hey, mom, I can't really find a job. What about this Orkin thing? I mean, what was that conversation like?
Yeah, so that conversation, I, the crazy thing is, so I did have a job which was just draining me physically. So I was while I was going to college and then after college, I was working at UPS, which is a incredibly hard job. I mean, I was basically like in what they call preload. So I'm packaging,
Right, right, right.
the trucks, right? So that's not an easy job. I did that while I went to school, and then I actually worked at a daycare, which is kind of fun. That was like not a job. That was just fun.
Okay.
So I was burning the candle at both ends because I tried to go back to school. So I graduated from a school in Riverside called UCR. I minored in business, which is the only good thing I did. And so I think she was watching how hard I was working and, not making like, I'm talking making like $30,000 working 10-hour days, with two jobs, which is the worst way to do it. So I think she saw that and she said, well, no matter what, if you suck, which I mean, there's a potential
Mhm.
that I could have very much sucked at this job. So, if you suck, then it's okay because you're still going to probably make more than $30,000. I think she just kind of was like, don't embarrass me. Right. Like, please don't embarrass me and be terrible
Just
and like
let me
drag my career down. And then I vouched for my own son. Luckily none of that's happened, but they, like it kept me at Orkin
I'm
longer
sorry.
than I
That's just
originally
the
thought.
story is just great. It's like even if you suck, you're not going to suck them.
You can't suck worse than like 30 grand, right? Like 30 grand is, I know it was like, I've been at Orkin for almost 17 years, but still 30 grand is not hard to make here.
I'm just imagining your mother giving you that motivational
Oh
pitch.
yeah.
Look, even if you suck,
Ed's
you
met my
can't do
mom,
worse
so he
than
knows
this.
that that's sort of the way it would go. Um,
But what a great support system right there.
oh yeah.
Like, can I ask you what is one of the things, or maybe a couple of things you've mentioned one already indirectly, what you learned from your mother, right? Probably the art of conversation. But what did you learn at her knee, if I could put it that way,
Yeah.
that really helped you transition into this job?
So, I mean, one was take it seriously, right? Which I mean, I
Mm,
watched her take it seriously. And Anyone that has ever met my mom, she's got her, we were using like Blackberries back in the day. And I know you probably remember that, but her email, and she's emailing all the time. She's working, this is not a job that's 9 to 5. It really isn't. It's
Mm.
customers, it's kind of like, this is how the conversations used to go. I'm on the phone with my mom, and this is before, so I'm watching this even before. We're having a conversation. I got to call you back, or give me a minute. And it's
Mm.
35 phone calls from customers. Right. And that's sort of the way that works. Is in the middle of her day, there's customers that wanted to reach out to her and talk to her. And, she's very easy to talk to, but she became the support system for her customers. Right. So that was
Mm.
super important, which was relationship based customers that'll take you from A to B and all the way through. So that was important. The other thing that my mom is just amazing at is she takes her inspections seriously. Like, now we all have iPads, and the iPads have like a map and a graphing software, but there was
Mm.
this older software, I believe it's called like Visio. She bought it
Mhm.
herself, with her own money. She learned it on her own, and she would have maps that are probably better than any maps we've ever seen now. So her niche was that she was going to give this customer something from her inspection, because in gold medal it's audited, right? So
Mm.
she has this audited map that they're looking at, and it's essentially like, she's spending hours on this thing being meticulous. And so I'm kind of learning about that art of, taking it seriously, again, keeping that relationship open, and then taking and giving the customer something, which now, it's funny because now I learn these things, and there's like all this psychological background to it. I didn't know that at the time, but essentially reciprocity, right? She's giving them
Right.
something, and in return, they're giving her business. So like, her
Right.
gift is this like awesome graph, and the business is what she gets in return, along with the relationship that she builds from there. So
Right.
indirectly, I'm watching all of this, like, not knowing that there's something to it. It's just, that's
Mhm.
the way it works.
And so when I love that, by the way. The take it serious. It's not a 9 to 5. And
Yeah.
also, I think the third part is like, she positioned herself. I mean, first of all, she invested in herself. Let's make that number 3. And then she became a subject matter expert. In other words, she knew her business because she's graphing stuff out. And I could only imagine those conversations with the client. And then so now you're in the position. Okay, you're in now, Albert. And so what are some of the things maybe, you know, when you're not in Orkin, you're like, "Oh, that's what my mother's doing," but now you're in it. Now you have the responsibility. What were some of the things maybe initially you struggled with that you didn't anticipate?
Oh, I struggle with everything. So
Yeah.
it's funny to kind of like, I've had, I think from like year 4 or maybe 3 on, I've had a very good career at Orkin. Before, it was
Mhm,
very middling. And
mhm,
I think a lot of that was just, it's overwhelming when I came in. And I mean, we're talking 17 years ago, so I think that some things have changed, and we have some advantages to that time now. But
mhm,
then, it was just a situation where I had no idea what I was doing. I was also in kind of like a newer position, because while I'm an account manager, I have what they call like a specialty. So my specialty is multifamily, or like apartment complexes.
mhm,
So I was maybe the second person at the company hired into that position. And so there was no training for me. There was no, person to kind of reach out to, because the first person ended up getting fired pretty quick. So
mm, mhm.
then I became
Okay.
the only person. So I had to do that thing where I think everything's a derivative of something else, right? So like, I had to watch my mom in her arena, which is like
Mhm,
warehousing, um, and that kind of specialty, and some of the multifamily, or not, sorry, not multifamily, all the other items of commercial. I had to
mhm,
watch that and figure out how it related to my world. And so that was a struggle. Luckily I did have like technicians to ride with. I did have some people to watch and kind of see their best practices and figure
mhm,
out how to apply it to myself. But
mhm,
you're doing this thing where you're trying to watch others, and then you're trying to figure out, okay, now I'm going to internalize it. How does that work for my business, or for my method? And you're just synthesizing like everybody. But it took a while to see enough. And, for me,
mhm,
unfortunately, it was probably around year 3 where I really hit it. But before that, it was just trying to figure out how to learn. And
mm.
luckily that has happened.
Yeah, why didn't you quit after year 1?
So
You could have easily quit.
that was the mom part. So
Right,
that was
yeah,
the don't embarrass me. So I
right.
mean, I think that is and I made more than $30,000. So even in year
Yeah,
1, I mean, I'm going to throw that out. Like in year 1, I was
sure.
probably like 35 to 40 grand.
Mhm,
Which, it's funny if you ever go on, I'm going to butcher this, but like on IRS, right? And you can kind of see like the social security numbers, like you're like
mhm,
the amount you should be getting over time on your social
mhm,
security. you'll kind of, now it's a little bit off because of the taxes or whatever, but you can watch your income kind of go up or down over time.
Mhm.
So it's nice to, not that I track that myself, but you can look
Mhm.
at it there. And there's definitely like the high school job, then during
Yeah.
college. And then as soon as Orkin takes off, it's like here and then it's right. So I made enough money where that wasn't a problem. It was more like don't get fired in the first year. That was
Okay.
really the fear is like, I was remembering each month, I was like, back then our goal was 10,000, like, as our
Mhm.
minimum. Now it's went up. But I was like,
Mhm.
man, just get to like 8 or get to like
Mm.
9. And so there was a lot of like right near it and then a couple over it. And then finally I was at the point where I'm, hitting like 20, which back then was a big thing. So it was the money and it was the person kind of keeping you like in check, which I think we all need that. I know, it could be your wife, it could be your partner, it could be a friend. In this case, it was my mom. And so she kept
Mhm.
me in check and I
Mhm.
just knew I needed to keep trying to get better.
I like the, talk to me a little bit about, I love everything you just said. Talk to me a little bit about, you were focused in on multifamily units.
Mhm.
And, I'm gonna make a statement and you tell me if you agree or disagree or just add some flavor to it. And that is, this in some ways, it's kind of a blessing that you're given a focus because you're not distracted by a bunch of different verticals, if I can put it that way, like your mother's doing warehouses. And by focusing in on that, you become very good at that. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, and I think that's 100% correct. And then from there, you can kind of build out the things that are
Mm.
like it, right? So
Right.
in
Right.
my case, I mean, multifamily took a long time to figure out. Um, and now I've been focusing on that same vertical for like the last 17 years. So
Mhm.
I'm very, very good at it now. But you're learning the lingo, right? I think you've noticed this as you talk to
Mm.
different clients, and even at Orkin, we have
Mm.
so many like I don't know if it's an acronym, but it's like
Mm.
GPC for general pest control. It's
Mhm.
BS. It's like base stations. It's just like there's all of these different things that we say.
Yeah.
RCD is rodent control device. It's like there's too much of this lingo that we have, but all of
Mhm.
our customers have that lingo too, right? And so, like in the world of multifamily, learning the lingo is super important. For instance, like this is just one thing. It's like a quick little throw around. But when I'm talking to a customer, I'll say something to the effect of, "Hey, did you get any PTE for Unit 5? Like, are they going to know we're coming?" Right? PTE means permission to enter. It's not
Mm.
my lingo, it's theirs, but I've adopted it and I throw it back at them and they always kind of like shake their head. And I've actually had some new ones that go, "What does that mean?" And then I can give them information about their own industry, which is kind of funny, um, which is the best way to do it. But that takes focus, right? You could read a primer on it, and I hope we have primers on all of these things. I'm sure we do, but reading a primer on that makes a big difference. But saying it, learning it, really getting yourself
Mhm.
saturated in it, you're becoming the subject matter expert. Sometimes even more so than your customer, and you got to kind of watch it there. But you're at
Mm.
the point where you can put all of your core focus on one type of business, one strategy, and learn how to stretch it as far as you can. Figure out how to make it as profitable for you as you can. And then the nice thing about that, when we're talking about multifamily, is there's derivatives off of multifamily, which is again, multifamily is just like assisted living. There's just basically a little bit of medicine involved, a little bit of food. It's very similar to a hotel. You kind of stretch it as far as you can. And I'm imagining it's the same way in the other verticals, right? You have a
Right.
warehouse. Well, you have warehouses that, you can be generalist and say it's a warehouse. And then you can be a specialist and say, I like to focus on warehouses that deal with, medical pharmaceuticals. And you can be
Mhm.
very good at that. And you can be then, oh, I'm food grade. Right. And you could, but the main thing is the warehouse, but then you're just getting deeper and deeper and deeper into
Right.
the subject. And I think if you're not doing that, then you're really kind of losing an edge because some of your customers might be doing that. I mean, sorry, some of your competitors might be doing that.
Mhm.
Some of your fellow account managers might be doing that. And you're wondering, man, why are my numbers down? And you look
Mhm.
over and, Rick over there is killing it and you don't know why. Well, it's because Rick is probably focusing and you're probably just way too much of a generalist at this point.
I don't think we appreciate how important focus is to, as you're pointing out, you begin to marinate in that focus. And you say you get the lingo down, but you also, correct me if I'm wrong, you begin to know who the players are, right? You begin to know what the regulations are, whatever, local government body handles, whatever. You begin to know all that. And it builds this base of knowledge, one, that you can share with people who are in that may not know that. In other words, in that vertical that don't know that lingo, but it builds your confidence because you get to know more and more. I like the way you layered on top of that. You call them derivatives. I use the word adjacencies, which is you find adjacent markets that are very similar, in your case, derivatives, and then you start leveraging your core knowledge and just expanding that. So I love that mindset. I want to ask you, I want to get more into the tactical stuff, like your day in the life of and talk about how, in the first 2 years you struggled, but really talk about, what are you doing today? What are your best practices? Victor, man, here's what I have to do consistently because the leads just don't come in. Sometimes I got to go get them, so to speak. But what do you do on a day-to-day basis, Albert, to kind of keep it going?
My business has sort of shifted over time because that book of business has gotten bigger. That
Mhm,
customer, I have a core customer base, which honestly, frankly, keeps me really busy.
mhm,
And so now I'm looking for ways to kind of stretch a customer, right? So if a customer
mhm,
calls in and they have an issue, I'm looking for a way to kind of shift to maybe like a sister property, like a
mhm,
referral process within my network. Or, in my world, I'm actually super duper lucky that there's like actually kind of a high turnover within my industry. So the industry of multifamily, you have a leasing agent who will jump ship and become an assistant manager at another group. So
mhm,
it's more like leveraging individual relationships at the properties to figure out where they're jumping to a new property. So it's kind of like just a lot of that. And so the
mhm,
daily is a little bit different because the daily is you see a customer and you're just really, for me, it's like all information gathering.
mhm.
Even within a conversation, I'm trying to seed like, oh, where did Bob go? Oh, like just trying to figure out where people went and
Right.
trying to follow them as much as possible, or trying to figure out like what is happening with their group and is it expanding
Mhm,
buildings. So it's a lot of like layering and questions along the way, kind of
mhm,
seeding like what we're looking for in the future. So it's a lot of that. It's a lot of also like I have this term. It's not a real term, but I call it program stacking. It's like bundling as well, right? So I have
mhm,
a current customer. They have one problem, and we all know that people are more sticky as a customer group if they have multiple lines of business with us. So then I'm
mhm.
trying to figure out, okay, well, like, can we do like a dumpster service add-on? Can we do flies? Can we do bed bug? Figuring out
That's so
ways to kind
smart.
of like program
That's
stack.
so smart.
Yeah, it works really well because you already have that organic customer, but B, that while you're talking to them, you just go, "Hey, by the way, like, how's everything going with the dumpster?" Like, you're just trying to throw in as much as you can, again, on that first initial conversation or on a follow-up conversation. And then sometimes what you find out is they'll be like, "Yeah, but like George over there has this other problem." And somehow,
Mhm,
as long as that conversation is free flowing and going, you're going
mhm.
to be extracting information. So I do a lot of
Yeah.
that. It's not like your classic cold call where I'm knocking on a door or I'm just calling up like strangers. I feel like I'm lucky and fortunate enough that my customer retention has been really good so that I've kind of adjusted or changed my strategy to not be a consistent amount of having to like knock on new doors. But I know that there also needs to be a need to do that because that can shift. Like I can lose a whole group. Sometimes it's nothing to
Mhm,
do with our service. Sometimes it has to do with just a strategy their procurement had. And I need to be
mhm,
able to continue to keep it fresh and knock on doors. So in my opinion, like, opportunity cost is a big thing. So we're already
mhm,
at a property. We've already like invested time to go to a property. So if it's an area that, if it's in a city that's not so urban that you can't like get a towed the second you move your car. Like I work in downtown LA sometimes and literally if I overpark, then I have like a $70 ticket. So I have to be a little bit more careful. But in some of the areas, you can park your car, you can cloverleaf, right? Because you're seeing a
mhm.
customer, you already drove there, you spent the time to do it. So then cloverleafing to the neighbor to the left, cloverleafing to the neighbor to the right. It's super topical because, hey, guess what? This property has rodents. You got to be a little careful about how you say it. You don't want to say, you know, uh, AM PM property right there has rats. Like that's not good. So
Mm,
instead, you just say, hey, we're dealing with rats in the area. We have some customers. I actually just visited one. Would you be okay if we blah blah blah? So that clover leafing works really really well. And then the nice thing about my particular industry is they're always open to bids. I mean,
mhm.
they're always open to it. So it's more like, do you have enough time to give everybody bids that you want to give bids? Because they understand that they want to have a second vendor, a third vendor. That secondary vendor thing works really well in the multifamily industry because if you have 100 units, guess what? Like they have to get all those painted. They have to have somebody doing all the electrical, doing the HVAC. Their maintenance can only do so much. So they already are used to having multiple vendors that they have to
Yeah.
rely on because one guy's busy. So we're just trying to be that secondary vendor sometimes. So I'm just very fortunate that I'm in this industry. And then I've just figured out kind of how to network it.
Two big takeaways. But that was a mouthful, man. Thank you
I
very
talk a
much. That
lot.
was
I'm
great.
sorry.
No. No, that's exactly what I'm loving this conversation. So but I want to emphasize certain points you made because I think they're worth kind of hitting on harder. And that is that if you have multiple lines, right, the stickiness, you can almost like every time I look at a line, it's like a little claw. I got another claw into them,
Mhm.
and my retention rates are higher because you've moved, I'll just go from an MBA standpoint. You moved from acquisition of clients to retention and growth. How do I hold on to them? And then how do I expand that book of business by mentioning different things like dumpsters, so forth? And then I think this second source supplier, like always position yourself as second. I was taught that, right? Even if you're not number one, like their current supplier, always position yourself second because not everybody wants to put all their eggs in one basket. So I
Mhm.
think those two things are just very powerful. I want to take you back a little bit because this is like you've evolved into, again, the retention growth strategies. I want to take you back to the acquisition strategy where you're just trying to get a book of business, your first 2 years where you were struggling. Can you tell me like some of your tactics, strategies you used then to kind of really get going? Because I want people listening to this who don't have a good book of business yet, who are not there at that level, that second phase. Let's call it the second phase. What did you do, and what were some of your routines?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, tailoring it in this case to multifamily is probably the
Hmm.
easiest way for me to do
Sure.
that. Again, works for assisted living and some of the other, I'm going to use your term now, adjacents.
Mhm.
Um, when it comes to getting an appointment, so if you're doing like a multifamily inspection, imagine a rectangle, which is the easiest way to imagine this world. It's a big box, right? If it's a high rise, then it's goes up as it goes this way. It's just the way that
Mhm.
these look. You're not going
That's
to
a cool
find,
way of looking at it. That's
yeah,
a cool way of looking at
it's
it.
just a rectangle. So the
By
problem
the
is
way, that's your artist side coming out, by the way. I need to visualize this
I
before I
do.
can sell
Yeah.
it.
I can't draw though. That's the crappy part. So when it comes down to it, you're not getting a lot from an exterior inspection on this site. I mean, I guess it would work with a warehouse too, right? You're doing an outside inspection, and what are you seeing? Like nothing really. You can open a bait station. That's a strategy always, by the way. I'm sure everyone will talk about that. You open it up, you see how it's being cared for. You get pictures, you document it, you move on. You're looking for conducive conditions. It's a very what I would call a limited inspection. So one of the things that I don't know if I did this as much back then, but if I went back in time, with the things I know now and the wisdom, I
Mm,
would do this every time, which is you go in and you're asking them through the probing questions if there's anything that just hasn't been fixed, right? So, imagine an apartment has again 100 units is the easiest way to
mm,
do it. You go, Mr. Victor, right? I'll just pretend like it's you. So,
mhm,
Mr. Victor, thanks for letting us come out because we're assuming that they're always okay with the bid because it is pretty much that way. They're going to let you give
mm,
them a bid. That's going to be a no brainer for them
mhm,
because they're used to that second supplier. So, thank you for letting me come out and give a bid to you. However, walking on the exterior, I can't really see if there's any problems. I want to be able to really audit your facility or your unit, your business properly to
mhm,
give value to you. And so what I'm trying to figure out is are there any interior units that you have just been having problems with? Maybe it's a vacant unit that you can't turn. You had a move in and you have to keep pushing them because the roach activity or the rodent activity is so high. Maybe it's an occupied unit that really just, it's had 2, 3, 4 visits from, your supplier and they just can't fix it. Is there
mm.
anything like that I can look at? Because that is where I can figure out how to fix your problems. Right. And so then I'm trying to get as much data as possible through that inspection.
That's so good. That's so good, Albert.
Yeah.
Dang,
And it
dang it.
works really well because,
So
imagine
good.
the first inspection is a box. So you're going to have inspector one, inspector two, right? Inspector
Mhm,
one, let's say it's some other rival company. They're coming
mhm,
in, they got a picture of a box. Maybe they had the right key to open the base station and they were
mhm,
smart enough to do that. And that's going to be their entire report.
mhm,
Then my report, if I get it the way I want it to be, is going to be that same box with, all of that detail. And then it's going to be, oh, hey, here is 5 interior units or 3 interior units. Here's a hole that's next to a pipe that even their own maintenance team missed, right? Here
right.
are roaches behind a fridge because everyone forgets to pull the fridge back because they come with fridges when you have these apartments.
Mm,
I move things, I look, and I get as many pictures as I can. And obviously, the holy grail is like a bunch of roaches or a bunch of rodent
mhm.
droppings or whatever the pest type issue they're
This
having.
We need
right?
another analogy for that one. It's not the Holy Grail.
I'll tell you, well, it's a holy grail for me. Yeah. It's
Go ahead.
different what industry you're in.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's like, that's the great part of it is I get that I have all of these pictures, right? Now we have
Mhm.
all these high res, we used to use the cameras. Now we use phones. And so I can get all of that. I can show it to him before I leave. Hey, thank you again for letting me come in, Mr. Victor. Like this was super helpful for you and me. Here's what I found. How many times did the other supplier treat this? And they go, oh, they treated it 5 times. Okay. Did they let you know how bad it was? No, they
Mhm.
said it's not a big deal. Like they don't actually even check out with me. They just send me a ticket. Like I don't know what
Mhm.
happens. I just assumed it was okay to move somebody in. Yeah, I
Mhm.
mean it's going to be up to you, but I don't if you want to move somebody in tomorrow because what does that risk to you look like? What does that
That's right.
liability to you look like if you move somebody into rodent droppings and roaches? So their brain's kind of thinking about risk,
Mhm.
and I'm trying to partner with them to reduce risk. So, like to
Mhm.
me, that's the value add, and that happens on again like the first walk in, right? Like you're just trying
Right.
to, and it's smarter if you do it ahead of time on the phone, right? Mr. Victor, when I come out tomorrow, I would love to look at a couple units. Would you be able to give PTE? Oh, you know what, Albert? We have a 48-hour PTE. Okay, that's totally fine. Can we
Mm.
move it to 2 days from now so you can give them proper notice? So you're
Mm.
kind of, again, using their lingo. And at the same time, you're trying to get a better inspection.
Yeah.
And that works really well for me. I think in different industries, it might be a little bit different.
I love the part you talked about, after you've done the outside the box look,
Mhm.
and the part you talk about, you specifically said, "Mr. Customer, Mr. Victor," in this case, "Do you have any apartment like this? Do you have any apartment like that?" You were very specific. And instead of being very general, saying, "Hey, do you have anything else? Like, can I just look at another apartment, just see what it looks like?" You're saying you're being very clear. And then you're putting that, it's just such a clever strategy because you're being very specific what you're asking for. And then now they're going through their, I'll call it the mental Rolodex, right? Going, yeah, we do have a couple of apartments like that. Yeah. But you're also indirectly seeding them with, they probably have problems,
Mhm.
which is probably why you're having a hard time renting them, right? You're seeding that. And then, as you say, you go through the inspection process, you're pulling everything back, you're looking for the holy grails, plural, right? And then you're showing the picture, and then those questions about how often do they come to look at this? And then the person really starts kind of confessing, well, they come back, they never gave me a report. I don't know. And that gives you that opening. So I love that because that opens up the risk part of it. So I love what you did there. The persona, here's what I'm looking for. Do you have an apartment like this, right? Identify. And then the whole risk. Oh, that's clever. Let me take a step back because I love all that. That was like a mini sales training
Mm.
course right there. It was great. The and so how did you call them? In other words, what was your method for, again, when you're first starting out? Did you just say, "All right, here's a list. Let's start calling."
Yeah, because
Walk me
you're
through that part.
because you have time and you're a little bit dumb when you first start off. Not
Mm,
everybody else. I was again.
mm,
I was a little bit dumb, so I was just trying everything. So I did call. Right. The one thing that back then there was resources like apartments.com would have the
mm,
unit counts. It would say the property management company. Right. So I was smart enough to somewhat connect the dots, and I would say, oh, that's interesting. That's an apartment management company that also has this. Okay, and I would click on it and find all their properties, and I would call them and the thing that I kind of learned over time is that I can also check in our system which ones were current customers, right?
mm,
So that I'm going to look at the current customers and I'm saying, okay, hey, we have these 5. The old me would not call them to see if they were happy. The new me does, right? So I call them to make sure they're happy with it and say, okay, cool. So you have our service, everything's great, perfect. And that's a little uplifting, anyways,
mhm,
when you have a bunch of phone calls to make and you talk to
mhm.
nothing but, ex, like non customers or, possible
Peppered
acquisition
peppered
customers.
with some positive stuff,
Yes.
right? Like,
You're like, and you're hoping they're happy, but you call those 5, they're happy. You're like, great. Okay. Now I can leverage that relationship with those to talk to the other 25 in the group and make sure that they, understand that those 5 are happy, that we're on their vendor list. That's a big thing, right? Vendor list. We're one of the preferred suppliers. So then I would, pepper that in and call all of those 25 folks, see who was willing to see me, and then do those meetings. So, I mean, at first, again, it was just like shotgun it and just try to go after everybody. Then it became strategic over time where you're looking at lists, figuring out what property groups we already work with. I mean, we now have the systems like Surf Suite or Boss is what we call it. You can search up customers and you can actually do it by email. So you can go in the system, you can actually say at, and then whatever the end of the email address is .com or .net or whatever it is. And it'll pull up everyone that we work with within that email if they have that email set up. So then you can kind of take that and you go, oh, wow, okay, we have, now some of them you don't know are on service. You got to double click a little bit further, do some research, right? That's the research part. But I'm finding out, okay, all of these clients are with us. So now I'm going to, again, make sure they're happy. And then I'm going to call all the rest of them. And that's so much better than just like, I'm going to have this random list and call them and just hope for the best. And sometimes you get lucky too. Sometimes that random list you're calling, there's going to be a few people that want to see you. You just call them at the right time, but it's better to have the strategy. You're going to invest the time anyways. So take an hour, do the strategy, and then call for a couple of hours. I mean, but back then it was literally a Monday and I would just call until I had enough appointments for the week. And then I'd be like, cool, I'm going to take a nap. But that was the young me. Now I'll keep working.
Hopefully your mother won't hear that part. She won't hear that part.
She knows I'm a sleepy person, so it's okay.
What I love about what you just said is that I always say there's 4 ways to grow your business. And the first one is about acquisition, getting new clients. And we talked about that was part of your first phase. And then you talked about retention, which is the second box, I call it. And then the growth, which is the third box. But then you hit on the final box, which I'm glad you did because it's kind of part of the acquisition, which is re-engage old customers who used to buy from us or have bought from us or even stop buying. And then use that as part of your momentum builder when you're trying to acquire new clients and kind of use a mix of that. That's powerful. I love that. Let's begin to wrap up. And I wanted to ask if I can transition out of strategy and tactics here. And by the way, Albert, thank you for that. That was great content. When you transitioned to Orkin, the first time you joined Orkin rather, what are some of the things that you saw, experienced that you didn't anticipate that, mom didn't prepare you for?
I mean, it's a very physical job. So, I mean, I think there's 2 parts or maybe 3 parts to it. One is it's a physical job because you are doing inspections, you're walking around. I underthought that part. So I didn't realize, okay, wow, like sometimes you're in an attic. Wow. Sometimes you're in the dirtiest environment you've ever been in your life. So I wasn't prepared for that. Now, what's funny is now when I don't have that around me, when I'm not in a unit with 1,000 roaches, I'm a little bit like, oh, this is too much. This is too easy. So you end up lusting for it after a while. You're like, I want that because you kind of know, A, it's different, it's fun. And B, it's just, it's almost an automatic sell or it's an interesting project to work on. You want that over time. So, there's the dirtiness factor too, which again, I think unless I'm a weirdo, you start liking. The other part of it was just the fact that there would be a little bit more rejection than I expected. I don't know why I didn't think there would be, but I mean, for every sell, there might be a no, or there's definitely going to be a no. And so I wasn't quite emotionally, ready for that. It took me a little bit of time. But then now you look back and you hear about all of and I'm terrible with these analogies, but there's an analogy about, the hitter that's on the mound and he pretty much misses most of them. And as long as he's hitting some of them, then he's actually one of the best players in the world.
Right.
I butchered it, but that is an analogy.
Yeah. By the way, I'm going to correct you on it because you're going to get rest on it later.
Killed it.
The hitter's never on the mound. The pitcher is on the mound.
Thank you.
The hitter's in the box.
Yeah.
How'd you mess up the box? The hitter's in the box.
There's a box? I know. I talked about a box earlier. I didn't know there's more boxes. Yeah. But the point is you're going to miss a lot, right? But then you're going to hit and get the home run. And, it's that makes the huge difference. Like, for me, I'm a volume guy. Like most of my business is ranging from 1,000 to like $5,000 sales, right? But I'm looking, I have tons of friends in this organization, and some of these guys do like a $50,000 to $100,000 sale. I mean, you're on those calls with Ed, and you're naming off names I've never even heard of before with like $200,000 in sales. So obviously, it just takes a couple yeses, right? It takes a couple of the right yeses to make it. So I wasn't emotionally ready for the no's. And then when I started getting the yeses and I'm looking and the paycheck's higher, right? The sales figures are higher. All of a sudden I'm going to our work event called President's Club. And, that was weird for me. and it was great. And then once you go, you're hooked, and you got to try to keep going.
Mm.
But that was an awesome change, because I still get a bunch of no's, and it still sometimes hurts you because you really thought it was a yes. But to be able to realize there's another yes after that, and another yes after that, that was a big change for me. So those are the things I was kind of unprepared for.
Mhm.
I can't really think of anything else that comes to mind.
Talk to me about the culture at Orkin, as far as like, when you needed help or something, or you were struggling with something, do you have any stories, anything you want? Maybe there's a favorite manager or somebody you worked with that really helped you out. Talk to me about that type of, help culture.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a great help culture, and it's kind of segmented, I guess I would say. Like, our a lot of the learnings that we have to do is about service, right? We're pitching the solution to people's problems, and it's not just all sales oriented, right? It's about actual, how do you do this service? How do I explain this service? How do we even treat for bed bugs? How do we treat for rodents? So, in the way that the branches are set up, we have branch managers and we have service managers. We also have team leaders. They're great too, but really the key guys there is branch managers and service managers. So when I was first starting, it would kind of look like this. I mean, this was just me being dumb, but I would
Mm.
call a service manager and I would ask him every question I can think of about the ant that I was about to go see, or about the bed bug issue. And then he would luckily, take his time and train me and tell me it all. And I would regurgitate it right away before I forgot
Mhm.
it.
Right.
And so that still happens. I still call folks and I go, "Hey, what are we doing?" Because California is kind of tricky with our regulations. So, hey, what are
Mhm.
we doing for ground squirrels now, because they canceled this product out, and what's
Right.
the new product? And of course, I'm about to start driving to the ground squirrel property, so I'm hoping he picks up because that's the answer to the question I need. And they're still very, very good about picking up and answering those questions for me. So on the service segment, I mean, those guys are amazing. And I have not had any service managers that aren't willing to share with the sales guys, because, the sales guys, there was a while there where the culture, I'll be 100% like with you. The culture was kind of segmented, where sales and service, and they did not meet, and they did not necessarily in certain areas get along. And that is gone, at least where I'm at. And we all meet, we all get along, and we all kind of respect each other. And so now they're very willing to help us. And of course, we try to do favors for them too. So that's on the service side. And that's the product knowledge side, right? The other side, which is like the sales knowledge. I mean, I've had mentors. I had my mom. I mean, the way I was kind of thinking, especially when you talk about specialty, right? So when we're looking at the specialties that we want to go after, I mean, we
Mhm.
have 400 something account managers. We have 800 something HSIs, right? There has to be a top percentage of them. And there is. If you just look at President's Club, there's a top percentage. That's the top 25 account managers. Take those top 25 account managers, and they're all going to be very good at certain things, right? Like, some years I'm in that top 25. We'll see where it goes this year. But, anyways, I'm very good at multifamily, right? So if you need someone to reach out for multifamily, I'm here, but there's going to be 24 or so other people that are great at something. And that's how you kind of get your mentor is, I'm sure region, I'm sure the branches, I'm sure division, I'm sure someone at the company knows who those top 25 people are, who's the best at warehousing, who's the best at restaurants. Those are who we should have as the mentors. You're going to have that locally in your territory, right? So in your branch territory, you're going to have the guy that you look up to because he's the best at birds. That make that guy your friend, and make him the person that tells you about birds, and learn from him. He may not be the best at bed bugs. There's probably another guy that's the best at bed bugs. So there's this specialty of pest and industry type that we can reach out for, and have them become our mentors. And I have not had anyone reject me when I asked for mentorship. I mean, we're talking from 17 years ago to now. So I'm feeling like that's our culture. I mean, that's only my world, but I'm there for folks when they need me. I'm best on phone calls. I'll be completely honest with you. As you can tell, I'm a talker.
Mhm.
But that is the culture I'm from, which is, I can reach out, and I would shout out names, but it would be so many people that it's
Mhm.
so hard to do. And then I wouldn't forget somebody and get in trouble. But there's such a
Besides,
culture of
yeah,
helping.
I'm gonna try to get you in trouble here.
Oh, thanks.
Besides your mother, uh, like who at Orkin that's not related to you as far as family, just somebody at Orkin that early on, you know, kind of gave you that little nudge you needed to keep going? And then give me a little bit about how they did that.
Yeah. So, I was already kind of doing well with the company. I mean, like
Mhm.
this was like my first President's Club I had made, and then I got a chance to meet one of my mentors. His name was Len Swavely. He's no longer with the company; he's retired out of it. Um, he was basically one of the tops that we had, and so he was already kind of central to my area, but he was in commercial. I was doing apartments, so the apartments were out of the residential branch. So I had not really
Mm.
met him very much before, but maybe I finally was part of the club. So he kind of took me under his wing, and he mentored me until he retired, probably 6 or 7 years ago. So from that stage of, hey, this guy's got it, or I
Mhm.
see something in him, is probably the way I would put it.
Right,
Or,
right.
and he was an account manager, so he was just in the same role as me. From that stage until he retired, which was when I was ready to kind of start mentoring folks myself, I was
Mhm.
under his wing that time. And it wasn't like, it wasn't one of those grand things where I was just watching him deal with customers. I would
Mhm.
be there in the office and I would watch how he talked to folks. And I said, wow, okay. And he actually had some multifamily too, which was kind of cool. So I can see how he dealt with it, the way he would kind of piece together a bed bug project. So I got to
Yeah.
watch like a lot from him. So I would say as an account manager, he was probably like my mentor in that way. And then I will shout one person out. So
Mm.
Robert Barr used to be one of my bosses back in the day. Now he's a region manager. But he was great he's like a great teacher. He's kind of the guy when he kind of goes, he puts his arms around, he goes, oh, my little chickies, right? Like he's like the mother hen, I guess, even though
Yeah.
he's, you know what I mean? But he
I'm
was the
gonna
one that
harass
would.
him when I see that. I'm gonna so harass him when I
You
see him
should. You
next
know
time.
Robert, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
Robert's great, and he's like a great teacher. So his was kind of like how to be soft with folks and how to teach them. So and how to kind of react to people. So I learned a lot
Mhm.
from him, and I haven't talked to him. I talked to him once in a while, but he's
Mhm.
great. And then Lynn was the account manager mentor, and then of course my mom, who it kind of bummed me out when she retired because then it's not as much work talk as I would like.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
yeah.
still want to kind of do the conversations about work. And she's kind
Right.
of like, "Oh, I'm happy I'm retired." I'm like, "I know, but I'm not." So,
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, I wanted to ask you, 2 questions, and we'll
yeah.
wrap up. This one I had to answer because Ed told me this, and I thought was interesting.
Oh, yeah.
He mentioned that you use Chat GPT,
Yeah, I use
and
all the AI.
in what sense?
So, I mean, I wish I can use it in a more full sense, but I feel like it's still somewhat not to the point where it could take over my work. But
Okay.
I mean, and you had a great, Ed D and Victor call about asking it kind of like probing questions and kind of having
Yep.
dialogue. I thought that was really cool. I use it
Yep.
slightly differently. So I'll use it as like a teaching tool for myself. So one thing that I did is they have this thing called like a custom GPT, which is where you can kind of add in your own material. So
Mhm.
what I would do is I added in a bunch of MSDSs or SDSs. Sorry, they're called SDSs now. Like
Mm.
safe the data sheets, and I can basically ask questions about, how does this product work for bed bugs, and it would spit out like an answer. So for really quick research, it's great. You can upload PDFs onto it and ask questions of the PDF. Right. I mean, you
Mhm.
got to be somewhat careful. I think you know this about
It's
internal documents.
yeah.
You
Sure.
can't like
Yeah.
if it says for internal use, don't upload it because I don't
Right.
know where it goes.
Yep.
But you can ask questions of it. I like it for a book, right? Like I haven't finished the book. I'll be honest with you because it's massive. It's
Mhm.
called Influence by Robert Cialdini.
Robert Cialdini.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Cialdini. I always
Great
say
book.
Cialdini, but it's a great
Yeah.
reciprocity is kind of like to me the key
Yep.
one there. There's some scarcity and there's
Mhm.
social proof is on that as well. So you can
Right.
like literally just ask questions about the book and get some really quick
Yes.
insights. So I use it in that, but for work, like that's more for learning, right? For work, it's a lot about okay, I would write an email and you'll look at it forever, right? With like we all do. You'll
Mhm.
look at it and you'll go, did I use the right like verbs and the right, I
Mhm.
word whiskers and all of that, or do I have the right tone? So now what I'll do is I'll just write what I want and my reaction, and then I'll load in the question from the customer so that it kind of like the AI understands that this
Mhm.
is what the
Sure.
ask is. My response, and I'll say, hey, I need this to be a little bit softer, but I also want to have like this kind of cue to it. And I'll let it kind of be the editor for me. So I'm using it in the
Yeah.
way that I think a lot of us should use it as like that editor. Um, and then
By the way,
sometimes like,
let's go through it.
yeah,
This is such a great tip. I just wanna go through it slowly because
sure.
I want people to understand it's not that hard to do. You go to OpenAI,
Hmm.
right, .com if you wanna use ChatGPT, or you go to Gemini.google if you want the Gemini GPT.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is you pop in the question the customer has, and then you say, okay, here's my response. So you just copy and paste the response in there after you type it in. And you can probably have the GPT massage the response, but you give it the instructions. You say, I want this to say this, feel like this, and really drive this objective. And you just literally just type that in, and the thing just does it for you.
Yeah, I think the key also with the AI is don't have it make your answer. I mean, that's the problem is when you have it make your answer, it just does whatever it wants.
Right.
It's better to have your words in there and your
Mhm.
message, and then, like you said, it's really just massaging it and editing it.
Mm.
And that is way more powerful, right? Because it's really got your tone in it. It's a professional editor has went behind you and fixed it. If that
Mhm.
makes sense.
That's exactly it. I want to close out with this question, Albert. This has been a fantastic conversation, by the way.
Thank you.
I want to close out with this is like, talk to me a little bit about, how Orkin, and the situation you're in now has really impacted you, your family, your life. Talk to me about that.
I mean, it's again, if we're talking about money, which is definitely a piece of it, right? If we're talking about
Mhm.
money, it's a piece of it. So $30,000 into, I mean, I won't say exactly what to make, but six-figure numbers
Mm.
is a huge difference. I mean, it's basically allowed me to have a lot of flexibility in my life and be as financially free as I can be, um, which is amazing. It's also just an opportunity where it's a career that's allowed me to grow. Um, because I'm practicing something that's so important that I think a lot of us don't realize is like sales is in everything we do. And if we're going to kind of cap like put an end to like the beginning of the conversation, I did not think I'd be good at sales. It just wasn't, when I looked out, my sister was great at sales. She owns a fence company. My dad was great at sales. He owns a fence company. My mom was excellent at sales. And then there was me, and I was like a little shy, and I was a little bit not thinking that was for me. And then you're in it, and if you take it super seriously, not, you could self sense of humor, but you take the job seriously, then you realize like you're learning a skill the whole way through. And Victor, I don't know enough about your story, but I know you have learned, your podcast, right? What is it? The why behind why you buy or something? Did I
Right.
say it right? Oh,
Finding the why and how people buy.
thank you.
Same thing. Yeah.
So yeah, so the idea is like you're looking at it from this psychological, behavioral science point of view. And there's this little curve. I'm going to totally kill it. But I'm going to try to draw it. It's like this, right? It's like a little bell curve. And it
Mhm.
says, it's a meme that's on the internet. And the meme is always like what they call a newbie, like a new person.
Mhm.
And then what would be like the expert. And then the person in the middle is just like the middling person. And it would be something like sales is hard and sales is hard, right? Or sales is
Mhm.
easy and sales is easy. However it is, the point
Mm.
is that you realize that like sales is really hard going into it. Like you're trying to learn it and you're like, this is hard. When you're in the middle, you think it's super easy. You're like, oh, people buy from me just because I have a great personality, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
Then as you get an expert at it, you're like, no, sales is hard because it's psychology. It's how
Mhm.
people think and feel. And it's the reasoning why behind they make this decision. And so I'm finally at that point. I'm not an expert by any means. I'm kind of going down the curve this way,
Mhm.
but I'm looking at it and I'm going, okay, no, this is a life skill that I can learn forever about just
Yes.
being better with people, learning how to manage relationships better, having people trust me, having, a sense of learning. And that's something that I can instill in my children. I'm constantly trying to read new books and listening to podcasts. I'm just trying to get better. I don't think I watch as many YouTube videos as Ed Donahue, but I'm
Mhm.
watching them, right? Like I watched a triple cheeseburger video last night, which was great again,
Mhm.
because customers pick in the middle, right? So
Mhm.
that's the stuff that I can instill to my family and my son and my daughter. And like, this is a job that lets you do that because this is your career. Your career is sales. Your career is people. And I'm watching, some of these other, I'm not going to say positions, but I have friends in other companies that do different lines of work. Victor, I'm
Mhm.
sure you have friends in different lines of work. And you look at them and they've made around the same amount of money or been in the same unhappy position for almost their whole career. And you look down and you go, man, if only they had a little bit of faith in themselves, right? If only they looked at themselves and said, I can actually go out and do more. And a sales job immediately makes you do that. Like
Yes.
there's no right. Like immediately you're out there going like, I can try something different. And, and I hear these stories where someone might leave like Orkin and go work at like, a burger joint. And I think to
Mhm.
myself, that's so sad, right? Because you could have taken a skill, and even if, you weren't making exactly what you wanted year one, year 3 to 5, you're going to be making money, which is one part of it. But also you're going to be learning something that is like university level knowledge. All it takes is a little bit of your own curiosity, right? And all of it takes is a little bit of your own thinking outside the box. If you don't get the answer you want, don't give up, find someone that has the answer. That kind of stuff is what it takes. But that's the university learning. I mean, you're not paying whatever these high prices are for school. You're getting paid to do this. And I look at it and I just go, that's so sad that he left to go do XYZ. I wish he just gave it a shot and believed in himself for a few more years, right? Just a couple more years before he really got it. Took me 3, right? Took me solidly 3. I've been here 17, and I hope to continue to get better. And again, that's something I can teach my family. But again, that's something I look out and I go, man, please just give it a little bit more time.
Yeah, not enough people talk about what you just said, that sales is a life skill. And it's something I would say it's beyond university, because you can't really learn sales at a university. You can learn
True.
about sales, but you can't learn sales. And that skill set that you develop, by the way, it builds over time, almost exponentially, just stacks over time because you're learning more. So there's this compounding effect. And that is a skill set that every company covets. They want people who know how to sell. And so while you're making money at Orkin, you're learning a skill set. And you can always say, hey, I have this skill set, which means it gives you a sense of security. Because if you can sell, you can work anywhere and make as much money as you want if you have the right company with the right product. And you landed, I think, in a great company with a great culture, great product and service. And Albert, I want to thank you for your time. This has been a great conversation. Any final words to anybody watching or listening to this podcast?
I just want to thank you, Victor. Yeah, this has been a ton of fun. Minus my terrible not knowing about baseball thing. I'm gonna get
Yeah,
butchered for that. But no, I mean,
harassed.
I want to thank you. I want to thank Ed for making it happen. That's probably the shout outs I'll have, because again, if I do any others, I'm in trouble because I didn't mention everybody. Because again, this company's amazing, and there's just too many names to actually shout out. But no, this has been a great experience, and I'm looking forward to hearing more of these in the future from the folks out there.
By the way, I will say that you screwed up just majorly right now, because you should have thanked me.
I
You
did
should
thank
have
you.
thanked Ed,
I
and
said
you should
you.
have thanked your mother.
Oh, okay. I
You
do
should have
thank
just
my
thrown
mother.
that one in that. You got to do a shout out for mom. So mom, big shout out. Victor Antonio's giving mom a shout out.
Thank
Anyway,
you. I'm
on
rewinding
that
time,
note,
and thank you, Mom, for teaching me everything I know. Sorry
all right,
about that.
well done. Yeah, slide that in. Anyway, thank you very much, Albert. And for those of you watching, listen, thank you again for joining us on the Orchid Red Zone. Take care.
Thanks.